Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our online message this weekend. And some of you know what I'm going to say next. If you are out of town, hope you're having a great time. If you're not feeling well, hope you bounce back quick. Either way, we hope that you're able to join us in this room sometime soon. That's the way church is supposed to be. So, all right, let's just jump right into it. If you were with us last week, then you're able to answer this question: what does our current sermon series have to do with Christopher Columbus and the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria? What do they have in common? So if you were here last week, those are the three ships that Columbus came over when he discovered the Americas in. We, for the last 4 weeks actually, have been talking about different aspects of the church. And the first one, different reasons why the church exists. And the first three are, we can kind of remember them, if you think of it, with the three ships. The same way there's three ships, Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria. It's just a silly way to help you remember. We are here as a church to worship, to fellowship, and for discipleship. So, if somebody asks you why the church exists, hopefully you remember the three ships. Then last week, we talked about the first of the two words that begin with the letter S. We are here to serve one another and to serve the world. All right, so you got the three ships and the two words that begin with the letter S. The first word last week was the word serve. This week, the word is share. We are here to share the gospel. We are here to share the good news of Christ's forgiveness that's available for our sins and the freedom that comes with that. So, three ships and two words that begin with the letter S. Those are the 5 reasons why the church exists. So that might help you remember. All right, so this weekend, growing deeper roots. We've been talking about plants. We're growing, grass and flowers and stuff in our backyard, and we're praying. We get enough rain. That's been helpful. That these things take root. How do we grow deeper roots in these 5 areas of, like we said, worship, fellowship, discipleship? Last week was serving, and this week sharing. How do we grow deeper roots in the idea of sharing Christ with others too? And again, this is the question we've asked every week, to help enable the transformation of our hearts. So serving last week is good for us, and sharing is also good for us. It's kind of centers around the word mission. Mission is the heartbeat, if you will, of any church, any faith, any community. So when you think mission, I want you to think outflow. And when you think outflow, I want you to think life. Okay, I know we've said it so many times. The Dead Sea is dead, mostly in part because it's the lowest place on earth. Nothing can flow out of the Dead Sea if you are the lowest place on earth. That just makes sense. Gravity can't take water anyplace else. It's the same with us spiritually. If we're not living our lives with a sense of mission, wanting to share our lives, the gospel, there's no outflow, there's no life. So today we're going to shift the focus from last week to serving others' needs to impacting people's hearts. Now, those two things are related. In fact, some people really make a distinction between service and ministry. They would say that service, I'm not really dead set on this, but that some would say service is meeting people's physical needs, and ministry is meeting their heartfelt or spiritual needs. So some people would make the differentiation. So here's the question I want to start us off with. When you hear the phrase, the world out there, the world, what kind of thoughts come to your mind? What do you think of when you hear the world? Now, some people are going to just, as Christians, we might feel a sense of frustration with the world. Sometimes we get angry at the world. Sometimes we have a measure of disgust when we see where the world is at and where they're going. Hungry people eat what is available. Thirsty people drink what is available. If people are hungry and thirsty, they're going to eat and drink what is available, and that is the world. So we should not get so frustrated with the world, not so angry, not so disgusted. We can grieve. I'm not saying not to grieve about the world, but the people who are stuck in it, stuck in their sin, what else would we expect? So it is kind of dumb to get mad at the people who don't have Christ in their life. Instead of having a burden for them, sometimes we just have negative feelings towards them. And kind of Romans 10 kind of hits on this. So here's Romans 10, verses 13 through 15. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Great. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have not heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news. There is something what we might even want to call the chain of salvation in this passage. Paul uses 4 questions to show how God's plan relies on human messengers. That's quite logical, isn't it? So here's the chain. People are sent to preach or to share. And when that happens, people hear. And when that happens, people believe. And when that happens, that's when they call on God and ask him for forgiveness and direction in their life. So we might get frustrated or angry or disgusted with the world, but what they need is to know the Lord. What they need is Jesus, all right? And there's this chain of us being sent to share, so they hear, so they believe, and then they can call, and their lives can be changed. If one link is missing from this chain of salvation, then the message stops. So it is incumbent on us to be willing to share. We've been sent. Are we going to share so they could hear, so they could believe, and then they can call on on the Lord, and their lives can be changed? You know, this word, it says, beautiful are the feet of the messengers. This word feet, it just shows that there's action and movement. This word feet emphasizes the active physical movement required to take the gospel to new and needed places. Not just new places, but needed places. Where are the new places? You might think, well, Africa is probably an unreached place, and unreached people in the Amazon, and certainly there are a few unreached people groups. But it's also, the gospel is needed not just in new places, but needed places. And that's right here. Our culture, our society needs the gospel. And it's probably shocking. I could look it up. How many people in America are just not sure what the gospel message is? In fact, it says not just feet, but beautiful feet. That the feet are beautiful that take the good news to people. Now, in the ancient world, a runner would arrive with news of a military victory, and that was a sight of immense relief. They didn't have the same kind of communication devices, so somebody had to run with the good news. So for those trapped in spiritual darkness, the arrival of someone with good news is considered an act of beauty, an act of relief. So we need to see ourselves as those runners that are bringing good news to people who desperately need it. Yeah, so there is a chain of salvation, and we have a link in that. Matthew 28, 18, 19, and 20. It'd be easy just to read 19, but I'm going to read the verse before and the verse after. You probably know where we're going with this. It's the Great Commission. Jesus told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all my commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So I could have just gone with 19. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. But I included verse 18 for a reason. because Jesus has been given the authority to send us. And I included 20 for a reason, because he says he's promising to be with us even to the end of the age. Therefore, go. Again, it's a command that's based on the authority of Jesus. This is a command or an order. It's not a suggestion. You could say it's a mandate or an order. Think about it that way. The Great Commission is not a suggestion. It's not the great suggestion. It's the great commandment that we are supposed to go. It's fair to ask this question. Is not following this command an act of disobedience? It's interesting. We think of sin as being acts of commission, the things that we committed, the things we have done. You can make a strong argument there are also sinful things that are the sins of omission, the things that we did not do. And there may be a measure of truth to this when we are not willing or interested in sharing our faith. Is there an act of disobedience in that? For the Greek word go, it's actually in the tense of as you are going, which implies that this is a missional part of our natural life rhythm. All right, so it's not just something going on a mission trip, it's living on a mission trip. So part of the natural rhythms of life. Christ says to go make disciples. The goal isn't just to get people to say a prayer or to become religious, but to help them become lifelong learners and followers of Jesus. Disciples are followers whose lives are changed. All nations, again, this removes all the boundaries. It's for everyone, everywhere. And as I mentioned, that last phrase, I am with you always, that we are never alone in this calling, in this command. Christ promises to go with us. So we see the connection between these two passages. Romans chapter 10 explains the necessity for us to move, to act, to be sent. Matthew 28 is the command to move outward to the nations and the promise that we're not alone. Without being sent, the world that we sometimes get so easily disgusted with has no chance to hear and respond. So here's a great question to kind of ponder at this moment. How? What do we do first? How are we to go about sharing our faith? Now, if we wanted to, I could put a bunch of sign-up sheets in the back of the room, and we could go cold turkey witnessing and just go on the streets and sharing our faith. I'm not opposed to that. We could have a visitor Sunday, and maybe we should be more intentional about inviting people to church. We could do prayer walks in whatever town you live in. There's something to be said for that. Some churches in the past have had revivals and crusades and tent meetings. There are lots of ways that we could kind of put ourselves in the place that we can share our faith. But I want us to go back and kind of go back a second. I want us to go back and ponder and consider this passage as well as we try to figure out how to do this. Matthew 13, 3-8, Jesus tells this parable, and he starts off with listen. And then there's an exclamation point after listen. This is something Jesus really wants us to know. Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. As he scattered them, some fell on the footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Others fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. They sprouted quickly, but the plants soon wilted under the hot sun. And since they didn't have deep roots, they died. That's what we're talking about, growing deeper roots. Other seeds fell among thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times what was planted. So what's the point of this parable? It seems seeds only grow and last and endure when they are in fertile soil. Here's the question of the weekend. How does soil get fertile? Jesus said 1/4 of the seeds grow, 3/4 of them don't grow to fruition. Why is that? How do we get fertile soil? My proposition for us this weekend is that prayer is the thing that makes soil fertile. I can challenge you, I can challenge all of us to go share the gospel, to go spread seed. But in the parable, when it falls on hard ground, it never takes root. When it falls on shallow soil, the roots don't go deep and they wither when when hard things come. Or they can fall on thorny ground. They get choked out by the world, maybe the good things of the world. So yeah, do we need to share our faith? Yes. Do we need to pray? Yes. So here's the challenge for the weekend. I'm going to encourage everybody to pick 3 people. Can you think of a friend, a family member, and a neighbor who needs to know Christ as their Savior and their Lord? Can you, I'm going to encourage everybody who's here this weekend to fill in the blank in the worship guide insert. Can they think of a friend and write the name down? Can they think of a family member and write the name down? Can they think of a neighbor, coworker, and write their name down? So we're going to challenge everybody to be in prayer that these 3 names would become fertile soil. And then there's another challenging thing. We're going to ask, are people willing to boost their prayers by fasting? How bad do you really want this? Fasting is a fascinating spiritual discipline. It kind of has a lot of benefits for us physically. That's not the context of why we're doing it here. But are you willing to be more intentional in your prayers for these 3 people by actually fasting? You know, Wednesday night we have a prayer house. Wednesday night is your opportunity to be the parable of the persistent widow, to come and pray for these 3 people. God is honored in the asking. The bigger the ask, I think, the more honor we show him. I have something I'd like to share. I know it's going to seem a little bit awkward or potentially awkward. As I've been thinking about it this week, I think in some ways, as a pastor of a little church, I have both the hardest job in the world and maybe even the easiest job in the world. They are both true at the same time. It is hard. Sometimes there's some soul-crushing things that happen, you know. So yeah, everybody's life has challenges, and mine is no different, obviously. But in some ways, maybe I have the easiest job. How much control do I really have? How much control do I really have? I can put this on the internet, but I can't make you watch it. I can orchestrate, we can orchestrate a great Sunday morning with worship and fellowship time and people praying and sharing, and I can put together a message that might keep people's attention and be theologically accurate, but only God's going to do what God's going to do. We have to be people who pray, because it is up to God what's going to happen. John 15:5 says, I am the vine and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. So let me ask you this question. How do you feel about that verse? Do you feel a sense of relief or a sense of frustration? All you can do is share. You can't convince anybody of anything. This John 15:5 verse says, basically, we can't do anything unless Christ is involved in doing it. Again, just another encouragement to be people who pray. So 5 things we can do to help create fertile soil for maybe the 3 people that are on our list. We've hit the first one already. Start with prayer. Ask God to give you 3 people to pray for, and then pray for them faithfully every day. Trust and rely on Him. Ask God to give you the opportunity, the courage, and the right words to share. Build on this foundation of prayer. Again, here's the point. This is a spiritual business. This is not an issue of flesh and blood or intellect. This is a spiritual business. And if we want to see people be spiritually receptive to the gospel, it has to start with prayer. Here's the second one. When you get the chance, ask questions and listen well. Good conversations are dialogues, not monologues. Be curious. Ask questions and listen to what they say. Just don't wait for your turn to talk again so you can try to convince them of something. Okay? We need to be better listeners. People need to know that they've been heard, especially if we're going to have a spiritual, significant conversation. You might not have heard this before. I remember hearing this in seminary and it really stuck. Bartenders are good counselors. Why in the world would a bartender be a good counselor? Because bartenders listen and they don't tend to give advice. A bartender is just there to listen, and sometimes people just need to talk. And when people talk, great things can happen. They can realize great things. This is hard. It's hard not to give advice. It's hard not to be preachy at times. So this point is just, can we learn to ask questions and listen well? Here's the next one is share your story. Listen to this phrase. One of the most compelling stories is always your own story. How did you come to faith? What difference has it made? That's a pretty challenging question. I encourage everyone to take the time to formulate maybe even just a 2-3 minute version of your testimony. Even if it's not dramatic, it still matters. Okay? So your story will resonate with people. You know, our 3 words here at Deep Rivers are loved, empowered, and sent. When you know that you are loved by God, when you're walking in your identity, when you sense you're being empowered because you recognize your authority, then it's so much easier to be sent. So I'll ask this question: are you swimming or are you just treading water? We used this analogy before so many times. It's hard to invite somebody into the swimming pool if you're barely keeping your own head above water. We're supposed to be sharing our faith, or if you will, inviting people into the swimming pool. And if we're not living with a sense of victory or assurance, if we're just in maintenance mode, trying to keep our own heads above water, we're going to be less likely to share our story. So where are you at in your story? Do you know that you're loved by God and walking in that new identity? Do you sense that you truly are empowered and have an authority in the spiritual realm that maybe you're unaware of? So share your story. The next one is practice hospitality. When was the last time you invited someone over to your house for dinner, dessert, or just to sit around your fire pit? Seek friendships, not conversions. The right to talk to someone about Jesus has to be earned. We need to be friends first and evangelists second. This is sort of a lost art, building relationships and practicing hospitality. This summer, we're going to make everybody this same offer. We'll encouraging everybody to have friends from church or neighbors over to your house for a cookout so you can just connect with people better. The church will offer you a $100 gift card so you can help with the expenses of these cookouts. So we want to encourage everybody this summer. What kind of connections can you make with people that might actually lead to spiritual conversations? And the last one is we need to, like I said last week, serve others. Many things are said about Christians, not altogether positive, sometimes quite negative. We can demonstrate our faith through tangible acts that reveal the reality of our faith and our new life. Giving of our time is one way to show a commitment to other people. So we need to be, like last week, find ways to serve others, because that is going to be a powerful witness. So here's the question that we started that we'll end with. Who can I pray for or share with to help enable the transformation of my heart? How is this good for us? Maybe you can see that serving other people might be good, but how is sharing the gospel good for you? This word, or the topic of salvation, does at least 3 things. First, it reminds us of what we've been forgiven of. When we are more intentional about sharing the gospel, we're going to be more aware, we're going to be reminded, and more grateful of what God has done for us. It's good for us to remember the grace of our salvation. And when we are willing to engage with people in spiritual conversations like this, it's going to well up that gratefulness in us. The second one is this. It reminds us that this is a spiritual world. It's easy to forget what the real battles that we face are. It's really easy. The default is just to go back to a natural world kind of understanding. But there is a spiritual world. This is primarily a spiritual world. And salvation conversations, spiritual conversations, witnessing, sharing kind of conversations remind us of that. And the last one, it gives us a burden for other spiritual needs and a burden for the lost. And when this happens, this builds your dependence on God. It reveals your own inability and your own need for Him. So a lot of good things happen when we are willing to get our eyes off ourselves and more willing to share people. So here's the closing questions. Who are your 3 people? Who do you know that needs a soft heart and an illuminated mind to the gospel? Hopefully you can come up with 3 names. The second question is, are you willing, what are you willing to do to better empower your prayers for them? How can you show more persistence or consistency? Again, this idea of fasting, how fasting and prayer works together, it's a really intriguing concept. How bad do you want it? And the last question is, what actions? Maybe it's asking questions and listening better. Maybe it's sharing your story. Maybe it's inviting someone over. Maybe it's trying to find ways to serve. What actions are you willing to consider out of these 4, in addition to prayer? What are you willing to do to help create fertile soil in the lives of the people that you know? So, all right, that's it. Again, thank you so much. Take care. God bless. Have a great day. Have a great week. Bye.